Welcome back to part 2 of the log arch build. And if you haven't seen the first one, go back and check that out. We do a lot of different things with this and come up with different issues that we would like to try and make a little bit better. And I've already gotten a little bit of a start on it and talked about it in the last video, and that was adding these second chain hooks on here. And the whole purpose of that is so we can double loop this one and then double loop that one for carrying 2 logs on each side. I've also got them added up front here so we can run a chain down through here, loop it, and then hook it back to that one, and the same on the other side. And again, that's for double logs. I've also added this under arch here, and that is to help contain a log on this side or a log on this side. And as if you've seen in the previous video, when we had that one big log, it wanted to kept coming up and going past the framework. So stick around and we're going to see what else we come up with on this. I know a lot of you guys in the last video had commented about making this an extension, creating a second saddle on the back side of it, all those kinds of different things. But here's what I really want to try and come up with is, because we already have a winch here, goes back to this pulley and it drops, and this is your pick point. So imagine, if you will, if I cut this right there, separate it and spread it apart, and then come back with 2 saddles on each side, which would leave me a 3-inch hole down the center. That would allow me to run that winch straight down through, and then it would allow me to hook a chain or the grapple right here and pull the heavy end up, chain it across, and then pull the winch cable back out, strap it back over that pulley, and then pick the back end up. All while using that same winch. Doesn't cost any more to do that. So that's kind of the route I'm looking to go on this. So stick around and see what we come up with. All right, well, I got my plasma cutter out, notched this out on that end, and I notched this one out on this side. And what those are going to do is straddle this side rail down here, and that's notched out for this, so it can come past here to give a little more support, come out and notch around that, and then I'll weld it across and across to this support and weld it to there. So when I cut this in half, separate the two, I'm going to add 2 feet to the middle of this. All right, I got everything all marked up. That's my cut line. That's the end of where the extension is going to stop. And that one there is the end of where that extension is going to stop. And then there was 2. All right, so in the last video, a lot of you had a lot of great comments and looked at all of them. And one of the main ones was, make this thing telescopic. So it'd have an inner sleeve with pins through here to bolt it in different locations or to extend it into different locations. But there's one thing about doing that it makes it very, very tough to do. And any kind of these structural steels like this, there is always a weld seam inside of them. What that does is it is an interference fit if you were to try and find the proper sleeve material to go inside of this. That particular weld seam makes it about impossible to get the proper fit. You would have to take the side of the inner sleeve and grind out a slot the whole length of that tube to allow that to ride in and back and forth of it. But I actually think that because I'm going a different route, I'm extending it, but I'm doing it as I said, straddling each side with a tube. And where that's going to play the biggest part is letting that winch drop down between the two and picking up the logs right here on the tongue end of this thing. And it eliminates having to purchase a second winch. And I think it's just going to make this so much nicer to be able to pick up the logs close to the tongue end and then also back here at the tire end. And once we get this together, if you don't see what I'm talking about, I'll explain a little bit better and you'll be able to see it when we actually go out and lift logs up with it. Well, if this doesn't look like an interesting setup, just trying to get it all clamped in and squared up, even, flush, and parallel. So it all comes out exactly as if it was never cut off. And I've got the two rails here that are sandwiched into the main portion back there. And I'll tack weld that off so I can at least get that end. And then I'll come up and I'll put the front of this, which is laying right there now, back in here and tack that up. And then this gap here is where that winch line is going to come down through.
Real bad boy. I've got a ton of gravel in my shoe, world on my shoulder, heart full of blues out in the dirt, down in the dirt.
Out of wire.
I've been a real bad boy on the town all night, starting to calm down with the morning light. I'm in the dirt, down in the dirt. Real bad boy. I've been a real bad boy on the town all night, starting to calm down with the morning light. I'm in the dirt, down in the dirt, down in the dirt, down in the dirt, down in the dirt.
I've got it all welded up, and as you can see, it's nighttime, and finished it out here under my work light that I've hung in by my garage door. But anyhow, got it all done. It's all fully welded to the length. Well, you can't see under there, but full length on the top side, and then I stitch welded it on the bottom side. I left a couple gaps so no moisture would get trapped in there. And I guess I just need to go down and clean up all the little BBs that are stuck on here with the die grinder and put a coat of paint on it, and it'll be ready to go. But I think I'm going to call it an evening and go in and watch the Super Bowl. Yep, it's Super Bowl Sunday. All right, so I've got Adam here, and we're going to do the reveal on everything we've done to the log arch. And one thing I wanted to point out was in the comments, and man, did I get a ton of comments on this, but one of the biggest things is the intention of this is to pull it behind the side-by-sides, either behind Adam's side-by-side or mine. And why I personally like the side-by-side is because it's much quicker to go up into the woods and back down when you're hauling logs. I also, in my opinion, feel it's safer than a small tractor, similar sized to a side-by-side. But brought Adam in here and wanted to show him all the things that we've done to this. And I've explained a little bit as we go. And the first thing you might notice is we've got a 12-volt battery-operated winch on there. Wired this thing up and rewired some battery jumper cables to this. So we can take and plug this into the battery on the side-by-side. It'll recharge itself and everything else, so we don't have to worry about that. But one of the biggest things that I wanted to point out and explain, or have Adam also talk about, was why we have this center pocket in here now. And Adam, I think one of the biggest things that we struggled with this was trying to pick up a log closer to the tongue end of the arch there.
Yeah, to pull it all the way in, because if you got the log out here, you can only pull it in so far before you really need to finish pulling it in, and also lifting it up and suspending it up in the air right here at this pivot point. So yeah, Doug texted me and said, hey, I got an idea. I don't know if you're gonna be comfortable with it, but I want to cut your log arch in half. I was like, well, you did it with my excavator thumb and that worked out pretty good, so I trust you. Let's see what you can come up with.
Yeah. So again, I think I explained earlier, but I put a quick clasp or quick pin on back here. That way we can release the cable, winch it in, and then that drops down in between here. And I think, Adam, if we can do that real quick. So if you drop that down between there, and then we run the winch in. All right, so now we can, if you take the controller,
Yep.
Now if we've got a log that we get somewhere right about here, and that's usually what happens, you can grab that log back off the back pulley and leave it about 4 or 5 feet back on the log and sling it in here where the cable's coming down there. But then it's almost impossible to pick this log up to get it further ahead to come into here if you can't back over the thing. And I know the intention of this is you back it completely over, but there was always a problem if you've got the heavy end up here, which you want to give you that tongue weight we talked about in the previous video, then it doesn't pick it up evenly and it doesn't pick this portion of log up. So that was one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to cut this thing in half and leave a pocket that we can put this sling down. And now the nice thing is we can actually swing this way out here, and it's got clearance all the way through there to grab the log back further. And as we winch it up, as the log comes forward, winching it up in, it also pulls it to the front portion of that beam.
Now that solves 2 problems. The first one was, getting a winch cable down through the center of this. But by doing this, you also lengthened it, which was another issue we had. We could only carry a log that was about 10 or 11 feet before, but now you've added an extra, 2 feet here?
2, yep.
2 feet there. So now my sawmill will take a 16-foot log, and now we can actually carry a 16-foot log out of the woods, fully suspended up off the ground. Before, the only other option was to lift up the front end and skid the back.
Yep,
So,
yep. We're at 8 feet to this point here, to the point back here of the pulley up to the front. So you double that, now we've got a way to cradle that up. We've got, like I talked about, the chain hooks on the back here. We did the chain hooks on the front here, and we added the log grapple, split this thing in half. We extended it 2 feet. I also, by extending it, made it be able to go down through here. And if I was to make this telescoping like I explained, I could not have done that. I could not have put a winch line down through there to pick up this heavy end of the log and bring it up here. Added this log rail here, and that keeps any of the smaller logs, or for dual logs, 2 of them, from coming up past this. And you might see a couple other little things here that I didn't talk about in the video, but I wanted to show you. And I did show you this. This is to snake a chain under the log if we decided to do that. And why I added a personal little touch. Harbor Freight sells these axes, and I used my plasma cutter, and I cut out a little pocket here, and I cut the axe portion of that head off of that, cut it down to turn it into a hammer and a pick. And why we use this is, let's say we need to pound that into a log to set it in, but a lot of times those spikes down here get caught in the log. So now this allows us to come in underneath it and pry it and pull it off. And I wanted to make sure that this wasn't just laying around and get lost. So I pinched down a piece of steel tubing and bent over the front lip of it a little bit just so it cradles in there. And now we have a place to keep that axe. And like I preach in all my videos, there's a place for everything. So we've got all the tools that we need to make this log arch work, and with the improvements that we've done, make it work even better. So I guess with hooking it up to the side-by-side, we can hook it to any side-by-side. We could hook it up to a tractor or whatever we want to do, and use the power off the tractor or the side-by-side. And then when you're done, as you're getting ready to leave the woods, you coil it up. I've made a little hook down here. Throw it over the hook, and then if you don't want your cables hanging loose, swing them up and clip them right onto the post that we have put on there. So that keeps all of that contained.
Winch controller mount here as well.
Okay.
Put a quick little magnet on the back there so you can, wherever you're standing, you can put it. It'll be close nearby. And also when you're not using it, you can keep it out of the weather by putting it in there. Coil this up and tuck
it in.
Right in there.
Yeah, and the whole reason I did that is I just wanted it to stay out of the rain and the weather. So when it rains, it isn't raining right on this controller. These are rated for wet locations. I don't know how long that switch would last, but that's why I tucked it down in there so we don't have rains coming on it. And then again, you can pull this back out, sling it back over there. I guess lastly, we had that manual winch on here with the braided metal cable. And no matter what we did, we couldn't get that thing to not act like a spring in there and just completely unspool itself when you pulled this cable out. So Adam went and bought a synthetic cable for that, which helped a bunch. So if any of you guys are ever in that situation, we did put a synthetic line in there, and it did eliminate that thing wanting to unspool, because it's not being a metal spring-like mechanism or spring-like cable in there to have that come undone. But even after that, I still wanted to put a electric winch on this thing just to make it that much nicer, I guess. So if this should ever fail, we've got a backup. We can bolt that right back onto the mount and go from there. So that won't be a big issue. The safety of that thing was not very safe at all. I mean, how many times did you see that thing come flying around?
Yeah, that handle on there, when you were unspooling it, it was a couple 100 miles an hour, it felt like.
All right, so we've got it all together. I'm handing it off to Adam. If you want to see how all these updates work, you're going to have to jump over to his channel, where we're going to go ahead and do a video with all these upgrades done to it to see how it works out. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Leave me some comments on what you thought about the changes on this. And I'm personally most excited about being able to drop that winch cable down through the center of this thing to pick up the heavy end of this log and be able to carry it around. So again, drop me some comments, give me a thumbs up. Thanks, and we'll see you again soon.